We've got another rankings episode today on the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Our top 20 way too early running back rankings. Welcome in Lucas Wenzel and Tyler Black hanging out with you. Cameron is still out. Is this the third episode in a row he's out?
Well, he definitely missed last episode. And he missed the one before that.
He missed the startup draft before that. You know what, Cameron? Maybe you should have stayed in Florida. Maybe you should have stayed in Florida. We don't want you back in Minnesota.
The podcast has been doing well the last 3 episodes, so I don't know.
We have been flying. Ty and I have been holding down the fort. Views are up. I think we found our common denominator here. Is that Cameron? Nice knowing you, pal. Thanks for being a part of the fellas for the last 3 years. No, Cameron, he is officially moving into a new home today. He is a homeowner. Congratulations to our very close friend. Now when you see him, his background will be torn up wallpaper and bare popcorn ceilings. So we'll have to work on getting his background set up. But we have our top 20 running back rankings today. Ty, who's the one running back you're most excited to talk about?
I mean, in a positive way.
Let me rephrase. Which running back are you least excited to talk about? Maybe that's how we should start it.
I'm probably Devon Achane.
Really? Mine's easily Ken Walker.
Well, I see. I wasn't going for the low hanging fruit on that one. I wanted to go with a more exciting one. So sure. I'm glad that you picked up after me then.
Let's dive on in, Ty. We got 20 running backs to cover and only an hour to do it. So we got to fly. Let's dive on in. So we have a tie at our running back 20. It is James Conner and Aaron Jones. Ty, you have James Conner as your running back 20. I have him at 21, and we have the inverse on Aaron Jones. You could give me a case on either of these guys, and frankly, I'd believe you. Mostly because as a James Conner stan myself, I will always be a supporter of James Conner. I think the difference for me here, though, is that I just can't trust James Conner to play a full season. So I will take the guy in, a more loaded offense. with a less certain quarterback situation. On a new team this year. I think I'd rather just take the gamble, my goodness, on Aaron Jones versus James Conner there, though I think they do have similar upside.
I mean, I think you can say the same thing about James Conner, though, that James Conner is going to miss 3 games in a season.
Aaron Jones, you mean?
Sorry, yes, Aaron Jones. Sorry, you had just touched on James Conner. Aaron Jones can miss 3 games easily as well. My reason for going James Conner over Aaron Jones, though, is just because we have not seen a running back have consistent success in a Kevin O'Connell offense, and Aaron Jones can certainly change the tide on that. I mean, we did have Dalvin Cook the very first year of Kevin O'Connell, but we obviously were seeing we were watching the decline of Dalvin Cook throughout the season in terms of just kind of peak athleticism, you could say. So I mean, it is we're kind of choosing the same player here. It's just really just a preference of one or the other.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I'll ask about Aaron Jones is, do you think he scores more than 2 touchdowns this year on the ground? I mean, that's what it's been the last 2 years. It has been 4 total rushing touchdowns over the last 2 years, 8 over the last 3 years. I don't think he gets 8 rushing touchdowns this year, but do I think he gets more than 4? That I do. So I think that is kind of the other tie-breaking factor for me. But again, you could just as easily tell me James Conner is going to finish ahead of Aaron Jones, and I have no reason to argue with you on that because I think that's totally plausible. Let's move on to running back 18 then, Ty. And yes, we did skip over 19 because we have a tie between Rhamondre Stevenson and Raheem Mostert for our running back 18. I have Raheem Mostert as my running back 19. You have Raheem Mostert at 18, Ty, but we're going to start with Rhamondre. You're a bit lower on Rhamondre by 1 spot. What is the difference between Rhamondre and Raheem Mostert for you? And we'll touch on Raheem Mostert in a bit, but specifically, how are you separating these two as, putting Raheem Mostert ahead of Rhamondre Stevenson?
I just think that this Miami offense is going to have the opportunity to score more points than New England. And that's not to say that like Rhamondre Stevenson won't score at all. I just think it's a matter of, we saw it last year with Miami, that whenever they get inside the red zone, inside the 10, they get real creative with the run game. We saw the Devon Achane kind of, and Tua Tagovailoa kind of like, behind the back, like underhand flick, right touchdown against Denver and stuff. Like that's what they like to do. They like to run the ball, and when they get to the red zone. So it's the fact that this Miami offense can get down the field at a much better rate than this New England offense, probably in year one of Alex Van Pelt, who is coming over from Cleveland. So like there are some good things to Rhamondre's, profile, because they like to run the ball. They like to use really one running back, and Rhamondre Stevenson has receiving upside as well. But I like the scoring upside in just a high-powered offense with Raheem Mostert in Miami.
Sure, and I think you touched on the element that puts Rhamondre Stevenson ahead of Raheem Mostert in my eyes right now, is the fact that there is that PPR upside with Rhamondre. I think you look at weeks 6 through 12 last year when Rhamondre finally started to bounce back. I mean, he was a running back 10 in PPR formats. Drew 32 targets over that span. I believe that was 4th most, 5th most, 6th most, 7th most. I'll get it right eventually.
One of them has to be right.
One of them's got to be right. The 7th most. I was doing quick math in my head before I hit the filter, and then it did not work. The 7th most targets during that stretch. Found the end zone a handful of times too. So I like the PPR upside Rhamondre Stevenson gets me. And if they are going to work in Devon Achane more, if he does stay healthy, I do worry he is going to spell Raheem Mostert. But again, this is totally like PPR preference to Raheem Mostert, because what I'm worried about with Raheem Mostert is that this could be the year the wheels fall off. And I know the offense is significantly better. I really don't want many shares of anybody in the Patriots offense, but as I'm doing best ball drafts on Underdog right now, Rhamondre Stevenson keeps falling right into my lap as like the running back 20. I'm going to scoop that value up all day long. And then Jalen Polk is the other player that I take on the Patriots offense, but this isn't an offense I want to invest heavy in because we know it's not going to be good. Right. So I understand in the aspect of, well, the Miami Dolphins, their offense is going to crush. Their offense is always going to be hyper efficient. They're always going to be insanely quick. My worry is that Raheem Mostert's 32 years old. And this could be the year the wheels fall off. And when you have a young gun like Devon Achane at 23 years old, I believe he'll be this season, why would you not give him more opportunities? But I also think, if Raheem Mostert can be the 1B in this offense and even get, a 40% of a 60-40 split with Devon Achane, that's going to be enough to give him top 20 numbers, no question. Mm-hmm. Do we want to move on? Do we have anything else we want to add with Raheem Mostert there?
He went under the radar last year, right? No one really saw 21 touchdowns coming from Raheem Mostert. At the same time, there is really no guarantee of what happened last year translating into this year.
Yeah. Because
of Devon Achane. I think a lot of people have not mentioned Achane did miss a stretch of games last year where it was just Raheem Mostert. So that certainly helped things out. Is there a world where Devon Achane is 1A and Raheem Mostert is 1B? Absolutely. I think Raheem Mostert is really just a bet on this Miami offense continuing to just be hyper efficient and just moving the ball down the field. And I think that's fine when you're getting this low in the running back list, because some of the guys that you're looking at right after him are not as sweet as Raheem Mostert could be.
This is a player I want to scoop up all over in best ball, though. I will add that with Raheem Mostert. I know we're talking redraft rankings, but this is like, he's going as the running back 29 right now.
Yep.
So what? Because we think Raheem Mostert isn't going to repeat last year, he's not worth drafting. Like that's what confuses me about Raheem Mostert. Unless if a lot of people are just like, no, I don't want to invest in a 32-year-old running back. But it's best ball in a Miami Dolphins offense that we saw can put up 70 points on a given week. Granted, it has to be the right scenario and the perfect storm of everything. But I mean, I feel like to have Raheem Mostert outside of the top 20 is just kind of. I feel like that either puts too much trust in Achane or you're just trying to be an injury guru, and we just can't predict those. We just can't. we can worry about them. We can label it as a concern, but there's no way for us to sit back and say, yep, Raheem Mostert, he's got 5 games this year and then he's out. Let's move on. Let's keep it moving, Ty. We're going to have a lot of ties up front here. We're going to have a lot of players that we have just one spot apart from each other, so we're splitting them right down the middle. Kenneth Walker and Alvin Kamara are tied at 16 for us. So Alvin Kamara is 16A. We'll start with Kenneth Walker at 16B. You start because he's the player I'm least excited to talk about.
Yeah, Ken Walker's role is relatively limited in the Seattle offense, regardless of who the offensive coordinator was or is, I should say. We saw it with Shane Waldron last year. We'll see it again with Ryan Grubb as the offensive coordinator this year. So I think the only way that you can feel good or optimistic about Kenneth Walker is that he continues to score on meaningful touches down near the red zone. Like, he did have 9 touchdowns last year, which is great. But the fact that he doesn't have as much receiving upside, that they are more comfortable using Zach Charbonnet in the receiving game than Kenneth Walker, that doesn't bode too well. I think what you can say about Kenneth Walker, though, is just that he's going to get touches and not the kind of touches that you want, though, in fantasy football.
Right.
He's going to give you 200 carries because that is the style of running back that he is. Like, he is going to command 13, 14, 15 carries a game. But we just have to hope that either this offense can take can kind of rebound from the really low performance that it had last year, because if they can continue to move the ball down the field and let's use the Miami example again. Miami can move the ball down the field and then they are comfortable running it in. If Seattle can do that this year, Kenneth Walker could have some sneaky upside. And I think that's why he's here at 16, is people are betting on a rebound of this Seattle offense. I'm just not so sure, because we are then banking on this offensive line figuring things out. And they did go out and kind of invest in the offensive line, so there is some optimism there. But we're then taking, we're then hoping that a college offensive coordinator can figure out an NFL offense. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it's impossible.
Yeah.
But I think there are there could be a lot of growing pains. Let's just say it like that. So Kenneth Walker, again, he's going to get touches, but they're not going to be the touches that you want when it comes to fantasy football.
So through the first 11 weeks before his injury last year, Kenneth Walker was the running back 13 in PPR formats, 149 totes, 613 yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground. He was, here we go, I got the right number right off the bat this time, 7th in rushing attempts. So just like you said, Ty, he's going to command a lot in terms of the ground game. He did draw 23 targets during that stretch, but we saw that role fade very quickly at the end of the season then, when he ended up returning from injury for the final 4 games. That became Zach Charbonnet's role. And that's the thing that I'm concerned with Ken Walker, is I think running back 13 might be his ceiling. And that's what concerns me. I'm not going to have many shares of Ken Walker. If he falls to me in drafts where I can get him at a value, I'll scoop him up, as a meaningful running back too. But I don't see him as this borderline running back 1 asset that I think some people may still see him as. I do think Zach Charbonnet is going to end up taking much more of that third down role. And not that siphons everything away from Ken Walker, but again, you're dependent on probably, double-digit touchdowns for Ken Walker to be sniffing, the top 12 in fantasy this year. And I just don't know if that's going to be plausible with this change at offensive coordinator. I'm just always pessimistic on college guy coming in to try and run an NFL offense. That I'm just always pessimistic on that. And so far that's worked out okay. And we'll leave it at that with Ken Walker, because we'll talk about Alvin Kamara, who I think is much more fun to talk about. And I have Alvin Kamara ahead of Kenneth Walker simply for the fact that his role is far more, what's the word I'm looking for? Robust. He gets all the groundwork. He gets all the receiving work. Now, granted, changing offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak is coming in now. from San Francisco, though. So this is why I'm like, you know what? I'm not saying Alvin Kamara is Christian McCaffrey. That's reckless. That's stupid. But it's not like Clint Kubiak didn't know how to utilize a high-end running back when he is one of your best offensive weapons, right? It is Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara as the top two weapons in this New Orleans offense. So while I don't think Alvin Kamara is going to have multiple games of, freaking 8, 9, 10, 11 targets like we saw in a few games last year, he's going to be plenty involved in the receiving game. Of course, we're expecting to see regression there. But again, just looking at some of the other guys that are going after him, some of the other guys going before him, I think this is probably like the perfect spot for Alvin Kamara, where there's still obviously plenty of room for upside, but also you're not drafting him so high where the floor, is going to fall off from underneath him as well.
Alvin Kamara, I mean, I'm going to state the obvious. For his skill set, he is in one of the most ideal spots, with his quarterback being Derek Carr, who is never, ever afraid to just check it down to Alvin Kamara. Now, the Clint Kubiak hire does make things kind of interesting, because all the stops that you see, I mean, because he was in Minnesota, he was offensive coordinator for 1 year, I believe, in Minnesota.
1 year.
So I think the best way to describe Clint Kubiak is that his offense is built off of the run game. That's where all of his stops have kind of led him and taught him. So Alvin Kamara could be another workhorse, but we are looking at a 29-year-old running back with a team that has a 29-year-old or 30-year-old Jamal Williams as well. And then a 21, 22-year-old Kendre Miller. Is there an opportunity for that like Alvin Kamara starts to get kind of faded out of the offense towards the end of the year if New Orleans isn't competitive in terms of the playoffs and stuff? Maybe. But again, his skill set as a receiving back and a guy that can handle a workload with carries, I don't really think there's a reason to doubt Alvin Kamara, but I think we're past the years of like top 5 or top 7, top 8 Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I mean, you even look just in 13 games last year. I mean, he drew 86 freaking targets. That was tied with Bijan Robinson for the second most in the league. And again, it might not be 86 this year, but I do think it's probably in that top 5 number, just because when you recognize the personnel you have on offense, that is a strength of Alvin Kamara. And again, when you have Derek Carr, who's not afraid to check it down, Alvin Kamara is pretty dang good guy to have somebody to check down to. So I prefer Alvin Kamara to Ken Walker purely because of that PPR upside. But if you're playing in a standard league, you could just as easily talk me into Ken Walker. And frankly, in a non-PPR league, I think Ken Walker would be higher in our rankings. But I think the biggest benefit for Alvin Kamara, though, is that the team didn't go out and invest in a wide receiver too. Like their wide receiver. Bub means.
Hello,
what? You know he won't overtake my boy Rashid Shaheed. You know he won't do that.
Come on now. Rashid Shaheed is essentially Justin Jefferson. I did not just say that. That's a misclick. But like your starting wide receivers are Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and A.T. Perry.
Gotta love A.T. Perry.
Your starting tight end is Juwan Johnson, who's not a bad player, but he's not a guy that's going to command a ton of targets.
Yeah.
And then you look at like the backup wide receivers in case like one of those starting receivers gets hurt. Yeah, Bub Means from Pittsburgh. Great name. Equinemius St. Brown.
Oh, that's where the other St. Brown brother ended up.
Yep. And then Cedric Wilson. Alvin Kamara is the number 2 receiver in this offense still. So like they're like again, when we're talking meaningful touches, right? Ken Walker isn't getting the meaningful touches in ups or in receiving. That's kind of a cheat code when it comes to the running back position. Alvin Kamara gets those in bunches. So I think as I'm looking back at my rankings, gosh, I don't know why I put Alvin Kamara below Kenneth Walker, but I feel like I think the best way that I can explain it is just that like I have to put Ken Walker in a tier of guys that I just don't really know what to do with. versus Alvin Kamara, where I know what I'm getting, who's an aging vet, but is still going to get a ton of touches.
Speaking of an aging vet, but also a guy who could get a ton of touches, let's move on to our running back 14s. Yes, plural. James Cook and Joe Mixon. Where do we have these guys ranked? Let me pull them up here. I have got James Cook at 14. Ty, you have him at 14 as well. I have Mixon at 15, but you have Mixon at 13. So you're very clearly higher on Mixon here. What is your reasoning for that? Is it just because he's in a better offense? Theoretic, I would say Houston is probably the better offense in Buffalo right now. But yeah, give me your logic on Joe Mixon here, because I have James Cook one spot ahead.
It just comes down to scoring for me. James Cook. Let me get the stats for James Cook. I was literally looking at him.
I got it right here. He's been doing his best Aaron Jones impression over the last 2 years. 2 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 years. 2 in each of the last 2 years, excuse me. So 4 total in his career. 4 receiving touchdowns last year, though. But I think what's significant is that James Cook did get the workload, 237 rushing attempts for over 1,100 yards.
Right. So he's getting workload. And there is some upside to James Cook in the sense that, like, between Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, that's 240 vacated targets. Like, that is a ton of open targets up for grabs for these wide receivers. Khalil Shakir is going to get an uptick in targets and in receiving work. Curtis Samuel is going to get some. Keon Coleman is going to get some. But I'm trying to remember who did the study. It was somebody on the Fantasy Footballers. But essentially the study that they did was that, like, when this many targets are opened up in an offense, it's usually the running backs that get not going to say like the initial majority, but they do get an uptick in receiving work because they just got to fill the targets somehow, right? So James Cook is a volume guy because you know that he's going to be the only running back. They did just go out and draft Ray Davis in the 4th round, but I'm not exactly like, push James Cook.
When James Cook only has 2 rushing touchdowns, that doesn't mean a lot to me in terms of like how it impacts James Cook. Oh, he only has 2 rushing touchdowns. What are you going to do? Take away 12 points? He's probably going to make it up elsewhere? Like, I understand it limits the ceiling. I get that aspect of it, but when I'm not expecting James Cook to be a 6, 7, 8 rushing touchdown kind of guy. That's just not who he is as a player.
He did finish as a running back 11 with just 2 rushing touchdowns. So there is that like even if he hits, let's say he does get 6 rushing touchdowns, we're cracking the top 10 at this point, right? With his workload and stuff. So I think like there is reasonable upside. The Josh Allen factor worries me still.
Sure.
And I think the other part of this too, player profiler, James Cook had the 9th highest light front carry rate. Are teams going to just try to sell out and stop the run? I shouldn't say sell out because that's extreme, but like with no Stephon Diggs, are teams going to just try to take the run away and force Josh Allen to beat them with Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid? That's also just the question that I have. But as my running back 14, I'm just recognizing the fact that he is going to just get a ton of touches because that's his role in this offense.
So the other thing that concerns me about James Cook, you look at when Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator last year for the Bills. I think we talk about James Cook as this receiving threat all the time. And I know I have James Cook ranked ahead of Joe Mixon. But the other thing I think I just want us to be cautious of too is we talk about James Cook as this pass catching, shifty kind of threat. From weeks 12 to 18 last year when Joe Brady took over, 22 targets for James Cook. That's not what you really want to see when guys like Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Zeke, Austin Eckler, Tyjae Spears, Jalen Warren all had 30 plus. Christian McCaffrey, Travis Etienne, Alvin Kamara, Javonte Williams All those guys had 30 plus targets, and James Cook is sitting at 22. So I think they're going to need him to get more involved in the passing attack this year. But again, I don't have any gripes with you having Joe Mixon ahead of him, because I think he lands in such a phenomenal situation in Houston that's shaping out to be what's looking like one of the best offenses in the league this year.
And I think the other thing about James Cook too is, like you said, he's gonna have to get more involved in the receiving game, but they're gonna have to be like not designed, but he's gonna have to be running routes, because Josh Allen isn't going to be checking down. That's not who Josh Allen is.
Yeah.
So if you're getting him involved in passing plays and stuff, fine. But Dalton Kincaid is also like in this like short to intermediate part of the field. So it's like there has to be a very unique and designed way for James Cook to be involved in this passing attack. And I'm not saying that it won't happen, and I would actually bet that it does. There are just kind of it's a little more complicated than just, like he's going to get like 20 more catches because he's, just the next best receiver behind Dalton Kincaid probably in this offense, which we can debate that all day. But I do want to touch on Joe Mixon, though. He is the only running back that this Houston offense is going to trust.
Yes.
Not Dameon Pierce. I can't even name who that third string running back is on that team.
No more Devin Singletary.
No more Devin Singletary. So it is Joe Mixon's backfield. And if that wasn't evidence enough, when they traded for Joe Mixon, they signed him to a 3-year extension. They doubled down on the fact that Joe Mixon is going to be their guy for at least the next year or two. So in an offense that is, going to be scoring a lot still, James Cook, I do think like that's why I'm not as all in on these Texans wide receivers as some people may be, because I think part of their touchdown production was because they didn't have a run game to score with. Now that Joe Mixon is there, I think Joe Mixon can take some of those opportunities away from those guys. So that's, again, why I've got Joe Mixon ahead of James Cook by one spot, is just because it's probably going to be the more efficient offense.
Let's move on to our running back 13, which is Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You have him at 15. I have him all the way up at 12. I'm curious this is the biggest discrepancy we have in our rankings currently. Three spots. I'm curious as to why you are lower on Rachaad White. What I come back to for Rachaad White is Bucky Irving. I think we all know how I feel about Bucky Irving. Look, I love his film. His film is fun. But man, that dude, not a big fan of Bucky Irving. All right, I don't think he's a threat to Rachaad White. And I know the efficiency sucks with Rachaad White, but you know what? If he's going to be the only guy in that Tampa Bay backfield, if he's going to see a crap ton of targets again this year, what's stopping him from being a top 12 running back again this year? That's where I just kind of land on Rachaad White. Originally this offseason, I was very out on Rachaad White. I still think he's a good dynasty sell. You'll get one more good year out of him, and then the Bucs will look to move on from him. Once his contract is up in another 2 years from now. So I still think he's a good sell in dynasty, but we're talking redraft. And if I'm looking at this year, there has been nothing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have done to that running back room that makes me think they're not just going to feed Rachaad White the football, because apparently he's the best thing since sliced bread there.
For me, it's kind of the same reason that I've got for Kenneth Walker, is that we have a new offensive coordinator here in Tampa who is Liam Cohen, who does have NFL experience, but he is coming from Kentucky. So we're a year, maybe 2 years removed from the NFL, which I think you could say that like the Liam Cohen hire is like should make you more comfortable than the Ryan Grubb hire. I'm just kind of worried that the loss of Dave Canales is going to have massive repercussions with this Tampa offense, that Baker comes back down to earth just a little bit I'm not going to say that like Baker Mayfield becomes like the biggest bust and that like his contract extension is like the biggest waste of money ever. But Dave Canales was a huge part of why Baker had his resurgence last year. Can that continue without Dave Canales this year? I would err on the side of no.
Mm-hmm.
So even though Rachaad White is going to be lead back, going to be bell cow in this offense, we are talking about a guy that only averaged 3.6 yards per carry in that Dave Canales offense last year. I'm not going to also make the assumption then that he's only going to average like 3.2 yards per carry with Liam Cohen. But I just think the efficiency of this offense could take a step back without Dave Canales. Are they going to be playing from behind more often? Which, like, Rachaad White is still involved in the receiving game. So he's still going to get touches. And I just think the reason, like, I've got him at 15 because honestly, someone had to fall in my rankings with the way that I had it, kind of how I ranked it all. And unfortunately, it was Rachaad White. And I think it kind of made sense that it was Rachaad White because of all the reasons that I just mentioned.
272 carries, man, at 3.6. I just can't believe they're going to get. This is a volume play for me more than it is efficiency or anything else. Like, I think this is what you're going to get from Rachaad White, no matter who it is at the helm, in terms of offensive coordinator. You're going to get somewhere between 3.5 to 3.25 per carry. You're going to get at least around the goal line. I don't think Bucky Irving is a goal line back. I think you're going to get probably another 5 to 7 rushing touchdowns from Rachaad White again. And you know what? You're probably going to get somewhere between 60 to 75 targets. And I just think that's who Rachaad White is as a football player. It's going to come down how many rushing attempts is he going to get. And unless if they want to feed Bucky Irving the ball 150 times this year, I think Rachaad White is going to be another 260 plus rushing attempt running back this year. That's what it comes down to for me. I think we know who Rachaad White is. And I don't know if it's totally dependent on the offensive coordinator, but that there's completely valid reasons to to knock Rachaad White in rankings. I'm just more optimistic on a guy who, again, will be involved in the receiving attack. And I think we just know who he is at this point as a football player.
I think the other part of this too for Rachaad White is just the fact that like maybe I'm trying too much to like swing the pendulum back towards like having him drop in what he will be going at in drafts. He's going to be going in like the 3rd round of drafts this year. And it's going to be one of those, like, it's okay. I know he's going to get touches, but I'm going to hope and pray that I can get one of the top 4 guys that we're going to eventually talk about. And if that's who I go with, then I'm okay passing a Rachaad White then, unless like I can't get any of these running backs. Then like Rachaad White feels like that low end kind of like you don't feel great about it, but you know that he's just going to get touches. And like what Cam likes to say, like you're not going to want to watch any of the games, but you know that he's just going to put up stats, and that's a-okay when it comes to fantasy. Then
let's take a quick break, Ty, and we will be back with our top 12 running backs for redraft formats this year. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. We have covered running backs 13 through 20 in our early redraft rankings. We are going to continue on with our running back 12, Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers. If I had a runner-up candidate for who I am least excited to talk about on today's episode, it would be Josh Jacobs. I'm just worried the better days of Josh Jacobs are behind him at this point. I think he gave it his all 2022 season, finishing as the running back 3 overall. 1,600 yards. I'm just afraid we're trying to hold on to that season for too long. And I know it's a better situation in Green Bay in terms of offensive line. I know it's a better offense in terms of Matt LaFleur being the head of it, running and organizing it all. I want to let go much more than I would rather try and hold on and make Josh Jacobs a thing again this year. That being said, I still have him as my running back 12, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and try and make a super anti Josh Jacobs argument. My worry is, though, we draft him at the running back 12. He finishes as a running back 18, and then you wasted your running back 1 is Josh Jacobs, and he doesn't even pan out for you in that regard. I just worry the ceiling is super capped with him because I think his best days are behind him.
I don't disagree at all. The beauty of redraft is that it's just the 1-year investment. I would be scared if it's dynasty. But at least for this year, like, that he's going to be workhorse. He is going to be really effective and use a ton in the red zone, even though, like, Matt LaFleur over the last 3 years, like, Green Bay has not ran the ball into the end zone.
Right.
Josh Jacobs is completely different than what they've had, though. Like, and I'm not gonna accept the whole, like, well, they had AJ Dillon and they didn't use AJ Dillon. We're comparing Josh Jacobs to AJ Dillon then. Like,
right.
Though they are not the same. So look, Josh Jacobs is going to, again, like I said, going to be a workhorse. He's going to score this year. This Packers offense, this rushing game is going to score more than the past years. That's just matter of fact. That's why they went out and got a guy like Josh Jacobs. That being said, though, you just know that he's going to, he's also just another volume guy, is he not? Like,
that's what you're hoping for. I mean, he was on pace for nearly 306 rushing attempts last year. So yeah, you're hoping for a volume play, but I'm so torn on Josh Jacobs because there's signs in which he can produce. There's ways in which Josh Jacobs could absolutely smash running back 12.
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely ways for that to happen. When I just go look, though, and I look at that 1,600 yard season, 340 rushing attempts, 4.9 a carry, 12 rushing touchdowns, 64 targets, 53 receptions. I mean, I don't think we get those numbers. And that's, again, to be a top 3 running back. If we're asking Josh Jacobs to, get 273 for 12 rushing touchdowns, he's still in that 2021 season, or in that 2020 season, and still had 33 receptions. I think that's a little more feasible, but does he get 12 rushing touchdowns after what we've seen in Green Bay the last few years in terms of their inability and unwillingness to run the ball around the goal line? I mean, I shouldn't say unwillingness. I shouldn't say that without checking the stats on that first. You had the stat, though. How many goal line or rushes inside of the 10-yard line did they have last year?
The Packers.
You at least put that in our chat the other day, I should say. I shouldn't just assume.
Oh, I did. Keep stalling. I will find this.
I'm not going to be able to keep stalling. What I'll do, though, is I think we can agree there's upside with Josh Jacobs here, but I'm just too terrified to keep holding on to 2022 and forcing us to try and create optimism for Josh Jacobs when he just might be the running back 12. And we can come up with, he's in a better system. This and that. We can come up with all the reasons in the world. But at the end of the day, I think Josh Jacobs is probably perfectly fine here at running back 12. I'm more pessimistic than I am optimistic on him, though.
Are we potentially drafting him at his ceiling?
Closer to than not. I worry the floor is lower than his ceiling.
That's probably why you and I have both got some kind of skepticism when it comes to Josh Jacobs at this point, because again, to be that top 5, top 3 running back, we are looking at like complete, like you are the focal point of that offense. 340 carries, 1,600 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns.
That's what it took to get to top 3 for Josh Jacobs. And that's absurd volume.
Right. That's just, he's not going to get that in Green Bay.
Let's move on to Isiah Pacheco. He is our running back 11. I sneaky like Isiah Pacheco this year.
Oh, how funny is that? That it's this year after he's had success, after someone said, oh, we should be in on him more last year. I don't know.
Well, you victory lapping that now? Where have you been all off season?
Brother, I've been victory lapping it. I think you've just been ignoring it because
I might have been. I'm not going to lie. I might have been. I love how the Kansas City Chiefs used Isiah Pacheco at the tail end of last season. They really started getting him like more involved in the rushing attack. They started getting him involved in the receiving game as well. We all kind of thought Isiah Pacheco is just, downhill runner, throw him between the tackles. He'll get to work. They started using him in the receiving game a bit at the tail end of last season too. And you look at the state of this wide receiver room. I know you get Marquise Brown. I know you just drafted Xavier Worthy. You got Travis Kelce. You're the Super Bowl 2-time back-to-back Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs now for the last 2 years. I understand you need to shake some things up a little bit, but Isiah Pacheco is really starting to come into his own as maybe not the focal point of this Kansas City Chiefs offense, but certainly the bell cow running back of this offense.
Yeah, I'm doing some stat looking up here quick. That was not what I was actually looking for at all. There was an expected fantasy points stat that I had heard, and I was just looking to verify it. But I think the simplest thing that I can say about Isiah Pacheco is that like he's going to continue being the guy, and he showed enough towards the end of last year, right, when they showed more trust in him, that he can be a key piece in this offense, even with Patrick Mahomes under center, that they are okay with him running the ball. There's almost like this shift in this Kansas City team, really. Like we all remember like the Tyreek Hill days where they are just high flying and just like passing the ball all over the place, not playing super great defense. This Kansas City team plays defense and runs the ball much better than they used to. So they don't need like this isn't like Patrick Mahomes it's still Patrick Mahomes' team, but they don't need Patrick Mahomes to play hero all the time at this point. They have trust in Pacheco to contribute and produce for them. So he's getting more involved in the receiving game. He is going to command touches in the backfield. I don't really know what there isn't to like about Isiah Pacheco at this point. Like this offense will put up points, even if it's in a different way than it has been in the past. Isiah Pacheco is going to benefit from that.
We'll cap it there on Isiah Pacheco because I don't think there's too much more to add on top of that. And let's move on to Devon Achane then. I'm not scared to draft Devon Achane. I actually think I'm going to be willing to take the shot on Devon Achane more than the average fantasy manager is this year. I think a lot of people are going to say he's injured, he's too volatile. I get it. I understand it. My thing is, though, if I know I can get a guy who, with Raheem Mostert last year, was able to put up absolute dynamite performances, looked absolutely electric with the football in his hands last year, I'm much more okay taking a shot on Devon Achane if he's going to be that caliber of a potential league winner for me this year. And I think a lot of people are going to look at Achane and say, too volatile, too scary, too injured. Why would I take a risk that early in my fantasy drafts? To which I say, I'd much rather swing for the moon than play it safe and have the player I chose to try and play it safe with actually not pan out for me when Devon Achane could give me darn near 18.5 every single week this year.
If he's going to be giving you that, let's say he's giving you 17 a week.
Sure.
how efficient is he going to be? Like he did only have 130 touches last year in how many games? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
7,
6, 8, 9. We'll say 9 because he had like one carry against New England, one carry against Vegas.
Oh yeah, those were the games where he got injured. Yeah, 7 full games last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So 130. Let's do some simple math. 130 touches over, it was 6 plus 3 is 9.
7 full games.
7 full games.
Yeah, if you said 9 and then 2 of those games he only had 1 touch in them because he left early, that'd be 7 full games.
But he played week 3 to 5, and then he played 13 to 18.
All right, just keep going.
So it was 14 touches a game on average, which if he can get to 18 touches, 19 pushing 20 touches a game,
I don't think he's going to get to 20.
So that's the thing is
I don't think he needs to, though. He doesn't need to.
He doesn't need to, but it's not going to be consistent is my worry.
Pull up the efficiency numbers. If we're going to make that argument against Devon Achane in terms of he's not going to get the touches, pull up the efficiency numbers because the efficiency numbers are what I care much more about. I'm not betting against this Miami Dolphins offense in terms of efficiency because they're going to be hyper efficient. Are there going to be weeks where I'm not going to be ignorant? Is Devon Achane going to have weeks where he only gives you 6 points because the Miami Dolphins can't play in an environment that's cooler than 60 degrees? Of course, he'll have down weeks. What running back doesn't? And I understand his volatility might be more consistent, for lack of a better word, than other running backs. But what other running back of the guys that you could probably talk about a handful of guys. I think Devon Achane is just as likely to give me 25 plus on a week as who am I looking at inside of our top 10 here? Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's just as likely to do it as Jahmyr Gibbs is. And the penalty, the price we're paying for him not being in that range is one, he's probably only going to be a 15, 16 touch per game kind of guy. And 2, we're already baking in the chance that he's going to miss potentially 5 games this year. At some point, we can't be scared to draft these players. We can't try and predict things before they're going to happen because as soon as we do, we look like idiots. So that's where I stand on Achane. If he can get me 25 plus and I can get him after, Derrick Henry, who has had his own, injury issues in the past, Travis Etienne, who's had his issues, who frankly thrived on touchdowns last year, with all these other guys who have question marks, I just like Devon Achane. I'm totally fine with. I'm in love with Devon. I shouldn't say in love with Devon Achane, but I am far more willing to take a swing on him than play it safe with an Isiah Pacheco.
I wonder if it's more so just about where he could be going in drafts.
That's 100% what it is. This ADP is already baking in that risk, and people are still scared to do it. Like he's going against running back 8 on underdog, and people are saying I might not have any shares. Why? This is a guy who can give you 25 plus. Now we'll talk about another guy down the line where it's like, well, why, Lucas? Why wouldn't you? And that's a completely different argument. But why? Why are we scared? Why are we playing scared as fantasy managers? We can't. I'm not saying Devon Achane should be going top 5, but I'm saying when he can give me 25 on any given week, I just got to snap my fingers. I don't see why Devon Achane should be any lower than this. Why people wouldn't be drafting him here. So that's where I stand on Achane. We can leave it there because we have 9 more running backs to cover, and we are running short on time. Derrick Henry at the Baltimore Ravens. He comes in as our running back 9. He is my running back 8, your running back 10 tie. I brought up on last episode that Derrick Henry is basically Versace Gus Edwards, which I do not retract that statement because you look at the amount of touchdowns that Gus Edwards had last year, and he had 13 rushing touchdowns. That was the 4th most in the league. I just think you get a much better Gus Edwards here. And I think, we're looking at Derrick Henry as a potential, 12 plus rushing touchdown guy this year. And I think that's enough to crack top 10. That's what it comes down to for me. It's a pretty simple argument.
I think a lot of people might be looking at, again, like he is 30 years old, that could potentially fall off a little bit, or even that you have Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson is going to, take some rushing touchdowns away from him. Lamar Jackson has never scored more than 5 in a season. I think it is maybe 6.
He had 7 in his MVP year, I believe.
And remind the people, when was that MVP season? That season?
That was 2019. That was 4 or 5 years ago now.
Oh yeah, with who as his offensive coordinator?
That was not Todd Monken. Greg Roman.
It was Greg Roman, right? This is a completely different Lamar Jackson than what we had seen back in 2019. So Lamar Jackson will score rushing touchdowns. Not going to sit here and say like, oh, he's actually just going to score like 1 or 2. No, he'll get like 5 or 6. Derrick Henry is going to get the majority of them, though. This is not Josh Allen at quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. This is Lamar Jackson. Very different.
Very different. Derrick Henry will score touchdowns in a very good offense, and I think we can really leave it at that because it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a very basic argument for Derrick Henry. Travis Etienne then is our running back 8. See, 8 for both of us. I have him at 9. You have him at 8. I'm scared this is too high. Can I be honest?
The hard part with Etienne, maybe just to add on top of that, where does he go? Because it feels like outside of the top 10 is too low, but you can't put him into the top 7. So he's just kind of stuck in this like 8 to 10 range, and it just feels gross because you're like, he doesn't give you any confidence going into this year. But we were saying the same thing last year. And I think it was Etienne's work and opportunities came from the fact that this Jacksonville offense was just a complete mess. So Etienne's going to get his. Like that there's no debate about that. But it's just a matter of like, can the touchdowns stay there? Can he continue what he had done last year? I don't think so. But at the same time, he'll have some very good weeks. And I think that's what's going to push him into that like borderline top 10, top 8 range, which is, where we've got him in our rankings.
I'm so concerned if the touchdowns aren't there, Travis Etienne's production isn't going to be there. I'm pulling up from week 10 on last year after their bye week. So we're looking the second half of the season. Travis Etienne was the running back 15 from week 10 on last year. He only had 4 rushing touchdowns and 0 receiving touchdowns versus, in the first half of the season, from weeks 1 through 8, because week 9 was their bye. It terrifies me. It really does, because he was a running back 2 in the first part of the season. So we're splitting it right down the middle, essentially, is what we're doing with this ranking. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. Etienne is still young enough and enough of a focal point in this offense where he should score touchdowns this year, but it won't be all in one half of the season and none in the second half. We're basically spreading this out and saying he'll land somewhere in the middle. Is that fair? Because that's where I feel like I'm at with Etienne, because I feel like his ceiling, if he keeps up the pace from last year, is absolutely a top 3 back. But I also think his floor is the running back 15.
Yeah, he's probably, is he the most volatile of these top 10 guys? And if he is, I think that's a reason why like we are sounding pessimistic.
No, but he might be the 3rd most volatile. I think he's bottom 3.
Well, and so look, we're looking for upside, but we're also looking for security and comfortability. When we're talking about a top 10 running back, Etienne doesn't necessarily give you that compared to some of these other guys. So like, there are going to be fans of Etienne, and I completely understand it. It's just not going to be for me, though.
No, it's not going to be for me, and this next guy isn't going to be for me either. Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams comes in as our running back 7. Running back 7 for both of us. I'm in so many best ball drafts, and every time I come up to Kyren Williams, I cannot draft him. I'm not going to have any shares of Kyren this year, because you want to know why? I was in on Cam Akers last year. Every year prior, I had said, nope, I can't predict Sean McVay. I'm not going to try to. And then I said, I mean, it's Cam Akers, man. It's Cam Akers and Kyren Williams. What, a 5th rounder? There's no way. It's Cam Akers. Look what he did tail end of last season. I'm all in on Cam Akers. And you want to know what happened then? Cam Akers didn't even last a week. And it was a Kyren Williams show afterwards. So yeah, you better believe I'm too chicken to draft Kyren Williams this year. That's me. Real life sound recording of me. All right, Kyren Williams, I gotta stare him down. I'm too chicken to draft him. What about you? Are you too chicken? Because I am.
I'm not as chicken as you are.
Oh, don't hide it. Don't try and act all tough here.
No, I'm gonna. You know what? Flag plant already in May.
What?
I'm kidding. Just because you dated me.
Chicken!
Are you chicken?
Do it now.
No, what it comes down to is that this offense, even if Kyren is getting 6 of 10 touches and Blake Corum is getting 4 of the remaining 4, Kyren showed me enough that this offense can support or that he can produce with that workload. The benefit to Kyren Williams is that the receiving work will still go to him because Blake Corum is not the receiving guy. No. He had only 55 catches in 4 years at Michigan. So he's not the threat that Kyren is and was last year in the receiving game. So there's that piece of of Kyren Williams that makes me not as chicken on him. History shows that this Rams offense trusts one guy. That when there is a guy, he trusts that Sean McVay trusts the one guy. So I think the Blake Corum edition is more so saying we can't give Kyren Williams 25 touches a game.
Nor should they.
We can,
frankly.
Nor should they. That's how you like. That's how you deplete your asset within 3 years.
That's how you get Derrick Henry.
Jeez.
Just saying.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
You went downhill.
And I think the thing is too with Kyren, this offense is like same argument that I made for Houston, same argument I made for Miami. This offense will move the ball downfield. Yeah, they'll move the ball. So it's not like we're gonna see touchdowns completely go away. We're not gonna see, his yards and yards per carry take a massive hit. It's gonna take a hit because that's it. We're looking at regression at that point. But Kyren Williams is too much of a staple in this offense to be massively impacted by Blake Corum in this offense. Are we looking at, the question that we really have to ask at this point, does Kyren Williams have that top 5, even top 3 upside that he was offering you last year?
Of course he does.
He still does.
He does still. If he is the guy, of course he does.
But I think this was the other volatile guy that you were thinking of when we were talking about
100%.
Etienne.
Yep. It was him, Etienne, and Achane.
So, again, I feels like Kyren isn't going to be for everyone. But if my only running back choices are Kyren Williams or Travis Etienne, I'm going Kyren Williams 10 times out of 10.
I would 100% agree with that sentiment, which is why he comes in ahead of Etienne for me. But man, I don't think I'm going to be drafting him or Kyren. I would much rather just draft Derrick Henry. And I know that's like, well, Lucas, you just said you're not drafting scared with Devon Achane. Different circumstances, man. Devon Achane is more of a Devon Achane is we've seen him thrive with a Raheem Mostert. It's a totally different question with Kyren Williams and Travis Etienne. I'm concerned Travis Etienne can't put up the touchdowns. I'm concerned I can't trust Sean McVay. What I know with Devon Achane is that, yeah, you know what? He might get injured this year. But what I also know is that dude is lightning in a bottle and he can give me 25 whenever he wants to. Let's keep moving, though, Ty, because we got to wrap this up. Saquon Barkley, our running back 6. I think a lot of people are going to fall head over heels for him in Philadelphia. I'm not going to be surprised if people draft him ahead of our running back 5 as well. look, he ends up in a better offense. The receiving work just isn't going to be there. We knew that about DeAndre Swift last year. It's going to be the same truth for Saquon Barkley. The rushing touchdowns is still what I have the biggest question mark with. DeAndre Swift had, I believe, 7 of them last year. Wait, that was weeks 1 through 8. I was going to say that's an ugly number, and I swear that's not true. I'm trying to find DeAndre Swift. He had 5 rushing touchdowns last year. Now, do I think Josh Jacobs is a better goal line back, a better running back than DeAndre Swift? Of course. Who did I say?
You said Josh Jacobs.
Saquon Barkley. Do I think Saquon Barkley is a better running back than DeAndre Swift? Of course I do. Do I think he's going to get more than 5 rushing touchdowns this year? Of course I do. I just worry we're going to fall head over heels for him the same way a lot of people did with DeAndre Swift last year. And, when you hit DeAndre Swift ended up as the running back 20 last year, albeit in 16 games, he missed a game. I don't think we can just overstate the potential downside of being in the Eagles offense. It sounds bad because the Eagles offense is very, very good. They're also loaded with weapons, and they have a mobile quarterback who has scored 10 plus rushing touchdowns each of the last 2 years, 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, 2 years for sure. I'll leave it at 2 years. I'm going to fact check myself on that, but I think a lot of people are going to absolutely love Saquon Barkley. I think he's going to be a late first round pick this year. I am worried he doesn't return much on this ADP though. I'm worried he just comes out as the running back 6 at best.
I think in the realm of possibilities, Saquon Barkley. Go ahead.
Can I jump in quick? 10 plus each of the last 3 years for Jalen Hurts.
I knew it. Saquon Barkley could have 250 carries, could have 40 receptions, which I don't think is likely because there has not been a single running back that has topped 40 receptions since 2022, I think maybe it was last year. DeAndre Swift, he had 39 last year. So that might be the same thing for Saquon Barkley though. Let's not pretend Saquon Barkley is a Christian McCaffrey kind of target demander. Well, so he can be, but that was rookie year with Eli Manning, who had no arm left. Right, noodle arm. If Saquon Barkley, let me say it like this: Saquon Barkley could have 250 carries, could have 40 receptions, and only 6 touchdowns.
That's a real outcome for Saquon Barkley.
That's a real outcome, right? So I'd maybe even my 3 volatile running backs that you have, I would put Saquon in instead of Kyren Williams, because I also can see a world where Saquon Barkley has double-digit touchdowns. He's getting 40 receptions, but then he hits 270 carries. Because let's be honest, Kellen Moore is not afraid to run the ball like that. We saw it last year. We saw it with Dallas, with Zeke and Pollard. He is not afraid to just keep running the ball. So we could see I think there's an argument to say that Saquon Barkley has top 5 upside. I think he has the same chance of finishing outside the top 10 though.
Yeah, that's a great one. In top 10, I won't even push back too hard on that because I think that is a realistic outcome for Saquon Barkley as well. I just think it's just great system. People are going to fall head over heels for it. And I just haven't seen this offense with Jalen Hurts at the helm breed success in terms of a top 7 running back.
And I'll just clarify too, because I think a lot of people could hear what I just said and be like, well, you just said that Miami moves the ball down the field, that Houston moves the ball down the field, and that who was the other one? That the Rams move the ball down the field. So efficiency in their offense and getting the ball down the field benefits the running back. You know what those teams don't have?
Jalen Hurts.
They don't have a Jalen Hurts. That's exactly what it comes down to.
Yeah, if the Eagles were playing with a Matthew Stafford with a Tua Tagovailoa and not a Jalen Hurts,
we're looking at Saquon Barkley as a top 3 guy at that point.
Right.
If it's any kind of pocket passer, he's a top 3 guy in drafts this year.
It's the lack of rushing touchdowns. And I think, a punishment from 3 to 6, I think is still being incredibly optimistic for Saquon Barkley. But yeah, here's where we have him, right? Because he's got to be ahead of some people. And I think it's more so we're looking at guys of what is their upside to hit this mark. So I still like Saquon Barkley this year. I just have my concerns around him. Let's keep it moving. Jonathan Taylor, a running back 5. I think he actually, people say, oh, it's Anthony Richardson. It's the same case with Saquon Barkley. Anthony Richardson could steal all the rushing touchdowns. I also think this offense needs to run through Jonathan Taylor before it needs to run through Anthony Richardson's arm.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jalen Hurts is the better passer at this point than Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson still has a lot to prove with his arm, only 59.5% completion percentage last year. I just think this Colts offense still needs to run through Jonathan Taylor to establish the pass, to give Anthony Richardson easy looks, to give him the opportunity to improvise. I'm just not as worried about it with Jonathan Taylor. And frankly, we saw Anthony Richardson rack up, 4 rushing touchdowns in 3 games last year without Jonathan Taylor. So I don't think it's a guarantee that Anthony Richardson just steals all the touchdowns. I actually think, Anthony Richardson is probably going to be more of a Lamar Jackson around the goal line than he is a Jalen Hurts around the goal line, where we see, 7 rushing touchdowns from Anthony Richardson, but can still see, 10, 11, 12 from Jonathan Taylor. And this is the Shane Steichen offense that's going to run a crap ton of plays. Per Hayden Winks over at Underdog Fantasy, the Colts were 3rd in plays per minute last year. This is how Shane Steichen runs his offenses. This is how the Eagles ran their offense in their Super Bowl run. Keep moving the ball. Keep the ball moving down the field. Keep the defense on their toes. And I think that favors Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson actually being a pair together. And I don't think they chip into each other as much as people want to make that out to be.
I think we're a year early on the Anthony Richardson is going to steal touchdowns from Jonathan Taylor. I could see it.
He only played 4 games.
Right. I can see it next year. But I think for this year, we still need to see an Anthony Richardson year of development before we can make that kind of statement that he's going to take away from one of the best running backs in the league, just talent wise. So I will also say, though, is there a world or is there a possibility that Jonathan Taylor rushes for 11 rushing touchdowns and Anthony Richardson runs for 9? Yes.
Of course there is.
1,000%. And I would say that's more likely than Jonathan Taylor getting 15 and Anthony Richardson getting 5 and vice versa. So there, and I think, again, just to compare the situations, maybe we just talked about Philly with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. It's because Jalen Hurts is an established piece of that rushing attack when it comes to the goal line. Anthony Richardson will be, but it's not as established as Jalen Hurts is in Philly.
Because you talk about Shane Steichen coming from Philly and the tush push and integrating Jalen Hurts into that rushing attack over there as he did. I think that could absolutely be the case for Anthony Richardson. But like you said, I think there's a year of development there first. And I don't think we need to push the envelope on this concern earlier than we need to. I think Jonathan Taylor will be just fine this year. And I think he's very clearly 5 after these top 4. He is the next guy I absolutely prefer. Yeah. But let's get into the top 4, Ty. I don't think there's going to be much debate around these. We both have Jahmyr Gibbs as our running back 4. I think he takes a step forward in this Detroit Lions offense. He was already the running back 4 from week 7 on last year when he took over when David Montgomery missed a bit of time. He's going to be not the focal point of the Detroit Lions offense, but a very important part of their offense. Again, he's a guy who explosive plays on the outside and gets involved in the receiving game. He already has this, not rapport. He already has this accolade of being a top 4 back last year when he took over. This is just kind of a no-brainer. Yes, Gibbs belongs here.
This receiving, the way that it breaks down the receiving options, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's Sam Laporta, it's Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going to get an uptick in receiving work, I think, this year, because there is no more Josh Reynolds who had 64 targets, and Jahmyr Gibbs last year himself had 71. I don't think there's really he like you how you said that Jonathan Taylor is firmly 5, Jahmyr Gibbs is firmly 4 for me.
And I think Bijan Robinson is firmly 3 then as well, because we'll get into the last 2. And again, I don't think there'll be much debate around the last 2, but Bijan comes in at 3. People are screaming, Gibbs is the better running back. Gibbs is the better running back. Tell me you have incredible recency bias without telling me you have incredible recency bias, because coming out, Bijan Robinson was clear and away the better prospect. Like, it was not a debate that Bijan Robinson was the number 1 prospect coming out of college into the NFL out of Texas. Jahmyr Gibbs was clearly 2. But Bijan was very clearly 1. He got stuck in a terrible situation last year. He actually drummed up more targets than Jahmyr Gibbs did. Second in the league in targets last year. Now you bring in Kirk Cousins. This offense is going to get significantly better. You don't have Arthur Smith in there trying to get cute and giving Tyler Algier touches. And like, let's just let Bijan Robinson get to work, because he has the capability to be a workhorse. He's very clearly 3 for me. I think the Atlanta Falcons offense will take a step forward this year, and I think Bijan Robinson will bounce back in that regard as well.
Agreed.
Breece Hall comes in at running back 2. And I think at this point next year, here's my hot take of the day. I think at this point next year, we're talking about Breece Hall and Christian McCaffrey as a debate of the 101.
Ooh.
I think we are.
Hey.
I think we are. Breece Hall, year 2 off of his ACL injury, is going to be so much more efficient. He's not going to be a guy who, golly, I don't even want to look at his efficiency metrics from last year. He averaged only, he did average 4.5 per carry. He averaged 4.5 per carry last year.
Somehow, some way he did.
There is no way. I mean, I'm going to pull up his game log, because, he has the games where, again, it's, 12.5 per carry, right? In week 1, where he goes 10 for 127, 9.38, 6.5, right? Then he has a whole stretch, 3.3, 1.4, 3.1, 2.2, 2.3, 3.6, 1.2, 4, 2, right? Like, just a stupid stretch there. I don't think we're going to see as many stretches like that this year. The Jets reinvested in their entire offensive line. Breece Hall is going to be year 2 off of his ACL injury, and the history shows that these running backs are more efficient year 2 removed from their injury. And I still think he's going to get plenty of receiving work. He's not going to get the ridiculous 95 targets was it last year? Yeah, 95 targets last year. But he's still going to be involved in this passing attack. They got to get the ball into his hands. You get Aaron Rodgers back too. I think there is a world where next year we are considering Breece Hall as the 101 alongside Christian McCaffrey, assuming Christian McCaffrey doesn't fall off an absolute cliff this year.
This offense is just going to be significantly better with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think we can overstate enough like how much better Aaron Rodgers will be for this offense than Zach freaking Wilson. So not much that we need to add to Breece Hall. He's going to be very good.
Christian McCaffrey's also very good.
And that's the episode, folks.
And that's the episode. Thanks for tuning in. I don't think we need to say much about Christian McCaffrey here.
No,
he is dominant, will continue to be dominant. There's no reason to question him as the number 1 running back this year and the 101 in your fantasy football drafts. Anything you want to add before we sign off?
If you can get any of these top 4 guys as your running back, I should say it like this. These are the running backs that you invest in the first round, and you can build up receivers after, because they are going to give you a ton of production with a ton of volume that you don't need to feel like you need to go double up on running backs right away. They are that good.
I 100% agree. These are your hero RB strategy guys this year. You take one of these guys, you pile up on wide receivers, and you wait until kind of the James Conner, Aaron Jones range before you even think about drafting another running back. 100% agree. And I would even wait longer, honestly.
You can probably get away with it.
Could look at it. David Montgomery, Jahmyr White, Jonathan Brooks, DeAndre Swift, kind of a guy as you're running back to then if you pile up on wide receivers. So that wraps out the episode, though. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Well, I can't say we, because I will be gone next week. Now it'll be my turn to be gone. So sorry. We do need to call Cameron up and apologize, because he needs to come back and run the show next week. So Cameron, please come back. He'll be back next week though. But thanks for tuning in. I'm at Lucas Munsell on Twitter, at Tyler_Plath for Tyler. You can follow the main page, FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. We got best ball values coming tomorrow. We got worst best ball values coming next week as well. We've got wide receiver rankings. We got tight end rankings. We got so much coming up for you all. So make sure you're subscribed and turn on those notifications because you won't want to miss out on what we have coming for you all. Till we see you next time, though, stay safe, stay healthy, and deuces.
Deuces.